right, let's address syllabus changes first. Okay? So, everyone should have by email, and I think I sent it, Tuesday, I sent it sometime last week, a new syllabus. According to the new updated syllabus.
I mean, they don't put as much sugar.
Danielle.
Sorry.
Today we would be addressing adoption and termination of parental rights with the petition of DSS case on down. And then Thursday, adoption of Linus. After spring break, we've got a mock hearing. By this Thursday, I will send you the facts for that mock hearing, and I'll address your roles on Thursday, so you'll have a break to prepare it. Then week 11, we start chins. On March 29th, we do the chins cases. On March 31st, we do student suspension, student violence. Then we have another hypothetical on April 5th, week 12, the Allie Wright case. After that, we begin juvenile delinquency, which we've sort of been talking about on an ongoing basis. I'll go over the delinquency statute, and we'll do some case law ongoing up until week 14, and where we end with the student search cases. Week 15, I've left for discussing just generally role of the lawyer, and last class for review, okay? Any questions? So we have skipped mental health, unless I get Jim Cropper to come and speak. He has an, actually the email bounced back, I have to call him. But we may skip that entirely. And when we talk about the student stuff, I may address the bullying issue. By the way, on Friday, April 29th, there's going to be another bullying conference here. Fred Golder is actually putting it together. We had a bullying conference before where we actually invited only educators, and it was a training conference. This one is sort of more general and more open to students, lawyers, litigators, et cetera, and it's different subjects, workplace issues, school issues, et cetera. It's Friday, April 29th. That'll probably be posted on the MSL website if any of you are interested in that issue. Now, question, and I'm sure you haven't read this, but I hope you haven't, to tell you the truth, because I want you to come into this hypothetical code that we're going to do today. No one has looked at taking Logan Law yet, right? There's a website, good, okay. Because I want to do a little role-playing thing with you guys. I've given you a handout that I actually also posted on the Juvenile Law online website too. And the handout is just a portion of a interview with a mother whose name is Christy Marr. And what I think I want to do is, I'll play Christy Marr if somebody will take the italic section and play the interviewer. And after we read through this and listen to this, if we could sort of address some of the standards in the cases that you've read thus far, anyway, on the relative to the adoption cases. Who wants to interview me?
When?
Elizabeth? When? Now. Everybody else read along.
Just reading the italic.
The italic, yeah, starting with can you describe?
Okay. Can you describe the first time Diane Sanborn ever arrived at your house?
Well, Logan was still in her crib. Andrew was sleeping. I had just gotten up. I just put out my first cigarette. I walked to the door like, who is it? She's like, Diane Sanborn, Department of Children and Families. I'm like, what do you want? We need to talk to you. So I opened the door. She came in, and Diane asked me all kinds of questions. She wanted to look at my cupboards. She wanted to look at my fridge. She wanted to see Logan. So I brought Logan out of her room. I got her dressed right then and there. I didn't care that she was there. I didn't hide nothing. I was feeding her the whole time she was there. Diane just asked me about my family background. She knew a lot about me. She was telling me what kind of trouble I was in when I was a kid, and like, wow, you know quite a bit about my life. She knew about Andrew overdosing on medication, and she brought that up. She asked if either one of us had a substance abuse problem. I didn't at the time, I still don't, but I said no on my behalf. And I said, he, meaning Andrew, he's in St. Mary's Substance Abuse Counseling. She's like, okay, well, we want to keep checking in a couple of months, in a couple of weeks, and see how everything's going, and whatever. Didn't think nothing of it. She didn't tell me who had called. She read me this ridiculous report. Something about that there were dirty bottles in Logan's room, and that she never had a bath. I mean, it was just, I sat back, I'm like, whoa. Said, somebody's lying. I don't know where you got the report. I think I know where you got it. She wouldn't confirm, but she wouldn't deny it either, so it was one of those things.
Who was it?
My mother, because she was mad because I moved out and I took Logan with me, so.
So she made things up?
Yes, yes. But I forgave my mother over and over again.
Why?
I think I needed her. She needed me for different reasons, whether it was financial or somebody to talk to. Somebody who knew me, just different reasons, I guess, wanting somebody there to talk to.
Did you tell yourself it would be different the next time?
Oh, every time. It's going to be different this time. She'll listen, she'll understand, and she made promises after promises. Oh, I won't do that again to you. Of course, it was always the same thing every time. I thought I'd learned, but.
Do you blame her for the fact that the state got so involved in your life for such a long time?
Yes, yes I do. You can forgive, but you can't forget. But you can only forgive her so many times. I'll never forget what she did to me.
DCF laid out a whole lot of rules for you. I'm going to read you some of what they call the service plan between you and them. I just want to hear your reaction to this plan. It says, Christy will submit names of people or person with whom she is or plans to be intimately involved with, and shall not allow any contact between that person until assessed and approved by DCF. If there is a person with whom Christy wants to be involved with, then Christy agrees that if that person does not wish to engage in services, then that person will not be part of Logan's life. They said, you must sever all contact with your mother. There were a lot of rules here. Is it hard? What is your reaction?
I resent all these rules. I feel as if DCF is too involved in my life. But as far as submitting names and everything, that wasn't a problem. I didn't have anything to hide from them. They asked me frequently, are you involved with anybody? So I wouldn't lie to them. I told them, and more than 9 times out of 10, I wasn't. But not talking to my mom, for the most part, I didn't because I wasn't supposed to. But I kept in contact with friends of hers and mine, mutual friends, to let her know what was going on with me.
I guess I'm more asking you not so much whether you kept the rules, but whether it made you angry that you had so much.
Yes, oh yes, angry. Somebody else was running my life. I was just a person following rules. Wasn't my direction, wasn't my thoughts, my opinions, it was theirs. It made it really hard to have your own life, but I managed somehow. Angry, that goes without saying. I think it was more hatred. Can somebody read this note? Norman?
Sorry. While Logan was in DCF custody, Christy had another baby, a girl named Bailey. Still forbidden from contacting her mother, she got an apartment for herself in Bailey. After 7 months, satisfied that Christy had changed, DCF returned Logan to her and closed her case. Christy then decided to move with the girls to Florida to stay with her estranged father. She became alienated from the family after a bitter divorce during which Christy accused him of molesting her. He denied the accusation and Christy later recanted.
When you decided to go to Florida, you were going back to somebody whom you had accused of molesting you as a child. Despite the fact that the department didn't want you to go, you determined that you were going to go. What did you tell yourself? How did you explain that to yourself? How do you explain that now?
How do I explain it? Well, I always had this demon. I always looked at him as a demon. I was always scared to stand up for myself and say no more. Well, I figured I was a big person now and I wanted to do this for myself. I think it was more for my self-esteem than anything.
Do you understand why somebody would say you were putting your own need before your kids? You were exposing your kids to somebody who could hurt them?
I do. That's the sad part. Sometimes you have to take care of your own needs before you can take care of your children's. But that was a hard choice to make. It wasn't an easy one to go down there. I originally didn't want to even take my kids with me. I wanted to leave them back here in Massachusetts so I could do it. But I couldn't be more than 5 minutes away from the kids. I just can't. It bothers me too much. I worry too much, so I figured if I took them with me, they could be safe, because I wouldn't let anything happen. This time, I was the adult, I could take care of them. It was a poor decision, a bad risk, and I know that. I understand why there's conflict with DCF with that one situation, but I think I needed to do it to get on with my life. Unfortunately, the department can't see it that way.
Christy returned with her children from Florida after 9 weeks and moved in with her mother, Kathy. She began a relationship with a new boyfriend, Paul, a convicted burglar. Concerned about both her living arrangements and her new relationship, DCF reopened her case. When her new caseworker received an anonymous report, never confirmed that Paul had hit Christy in front of Logan, the caseworker moved quickly to remove both girls from Christy's custody.
Can you tell about how the children were taken from your home? Tell me the story.
Logan was sick. She was sleeping on the couch. Bailey had just gotten up from her morning nap. Paul had gone in to go get the baby to bring her out, and there was a knock at the door. It was 11:30 in the morning, and I remember them walking in. I didn't have my hand on the door yet, and they just walked right in. There was 2 caseworkers and 2 cops. There was one in uniform, one out of uniform. I said, yes, can I help you? I knew who it was, knew the caseworker right by her face. She goes, yes, we're here to take your kids. I'm like, excuse me, why? It's in the affidavit, read it, get their things together. I'm like, you can't do this. She goes, oh yes, I can, and I'm going to, and she did. I got Logan up and I woke her up. She looked at the caseworker and she knew who she was. She knew why she was there. Logan started screaming, no, Mommy, don't let them take me. Mommy, please don't let them take me. I told her it was going to be okay. She's like, no, Mommy, don't make me go. You're talking about a 4-year-old who's sick with the flu, you know? I barely had time to pack a small bag for each of them, and they were gone. I carried them all the way out to the van. I was surrounded by 2 cops and 2 caseworkers. One, the caseworker herself, jumped into the van in the driver's seat, and the other one was in the back seat with the kids, trying to get them buckled in. They slammed the door and she took off. I remember I fell to my knees and I cried, dear God, no. Okay, so this was just the beginning, and later on Thursday, we'll talk more about, what happened consequently in this case. But I thought I'd bring it up as a good sort of introduction to some of your termination adoption cases that you've read. What are Christie's issues? Or what does the department see Christie's issues to be that conceivably could be issues that would really be to her detriment if the department in the long run seeks to terminate parental rights?
She fit.
Alina says fit mother, but let's be specific about some of the facts that would create the inference that she might be an unfit mother. Marina?
She's probably unable to protect the kids from any potential harm. Like the
Okay,
kids
who are
in
the
Florida.
people that have been named so far, or the types of relationships that she's having that the department might have a problem with?
Andrew?
To boyfriends.
Her boyfriends, okay,
Her
her father, and her mother. So 3 different kinds of relationships. So you mentioned at first, Marina, let's talk about the boyfriends and the domestic violence issue. How could that issue hurt her in the long run? I mean, she's already lost temporary custody, and this case would go to a 72-hour hearing, and that sets the stage for the whole thing. So how could the fact that she has boyfriends like Andrew with substance abuse and Paul who has a criminal history, how does that hurt her?
She is a victim of the abuse herself, and potential the kids can become victims as well. And one of them was the substance user, so that the kids shouldn't be exposed to that either.
Is she a substance abuse
She's
user?
not. She's not, but
She's not, okay, so that's one thing in her favor. She doesn't have any of those kinds of issues. Norman?
I think that the department could, by inference, make a reasonable determination that because of the people that she hangs out with, they're not model citizens. And so you look at them and they would have to ask, you know, like, what good can come out of a relationship where she has 2 kids, she's running with these kind of people, and you know, their behavior is eventually going to have a carryover effect on her, and then, you know, to the kids.
What people? We heard about the boyfriends. Did you want to talk about either her mother or her father?
Well, you know, unless I missed something, you know, because I was, you know, so busy trying to eat, but about the mother, I mean.
I don't think it's in this, it's
So the
here,
mother's just a
but
busybody.
There's some issue with the mother, and I don't remember if it has to do with mother's either criminal or previous 51As or something to that effect where DCF would have in their service plan. You can't see her.
Okay.
You can't have contact with her. It's interesting because it's mother that files you know, at least one of the 51As in the history of the Mar children. And what about father, Elizabeth?
So he's in Florida, and Christy accused him of molesting her as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And she just says that she's scared to stick up for herself and say, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. So it just kind of shows how she, you know, it's this vicious cycle. She's going back to the father, like she has nowhere else to go. And she's so vulnerable, too, to just go back and not stand up for herself because her self-esteem is so low.
So these relationship issues and maybe lifestyle issues, for lack of a better word, any of the cases that you've read, would they lend any light on, you know, how a court would look, number one, temporarily, and in the long run, at the issue of custody of Christy Mar's children?
Seems like.
Okay, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
You gonna answer that?
Well,
Because there are other issues that I want to talk about too.
well, it seems like a lot of the cases had to do with, we're taking your kids and you're not gonna, you know, have any say. I mean, it seemed like there were a lot of those, that 210-3, that, and so, I mean, you know, they're not gonna do a 210-3
If what?
if the parents are model citizens. I mean, I think that, you know, they determined that, they made the determination that the situation is sufficiently bad where you know, they're gonna get the court to approve the
So
no
if
consent.
mother, let me put it this way, so mother, we all agree, mother has relationship issues, bordering on PTSD, domestic violence, etc. But how, if at all, does that interact with the way she cares for her children?
Well, I mean.
In the little that you've seen, when she described, you know, what was, you know, Logan, one of them sick, and the caseworker came in and looked around, and it looks like everything was hunky-dory in terms of, you know, there's no issue that of lack of food or any basic stuff going on. So the question is, again, you know, how is it, if at all, do her issues affect her children? I mean, Marina projected into the future that perhaps children who witness domestic violence, we don't know that from these facts right now.
She obviously, you know, seems to have either a thick skull or a long learning curve or something, because, you know, I mean, if you really care about your kids, and I can't say that, I mean, you know, because she's got her, you know, dependency needs, and she's going after her, you know, getting into a relationship that doesn't have really a very savory future. But I mean, she understands what it's like to, you know, have her kids
you know, I mean, she saw Logan go away, and so she gets into this relationship with Paul after she came back from Florida, so
Mhm.
she's not doing anything that is helping those kids. She may love
So,
them.
Alita said at the beginning, the question was whether she was unfit. So if this case went to trial based on these facts, is she currently unfit?
And also the question of can she provide for the children? Maybe she becomes so dependent and going from one relationship to another because she's not able to provide. That's one of the things, one of the factors of fitness. If you cannot, or you don't have money or any other means, or you not mature enough to go and ask for assistance, and maybe go to on welfare or some other stuff, but
Well, suppose the department is saying that she hasn't followed any of the service plans. So from the time of removal of these children on a temporary basis, but by the time it goes to trial, you might have a multitude of service plans, and they all would be revolving around again the relationship issues, maybe getting some sort of counseling, etc.
Financially.
Proper, a proper home if she had issues with that and so forth. So what if, at the time of trial, the department is saying she hasn't followed the service plans. She's now living with Ed, who also has similar issues. She has been talking to Mom. So all of those issues are still prevalent at trial.
That could be used as a proof that she's unfit.
Would and could they also be used as proof that her parental rights should be terminated? And by what test, what factors would the court be looking at in that case, the most drastic situation?
It's a twofold, the way I understood it, it's a twofold test. One is the unfitness of a parent, and another is to the best interest of the children would be if her rights will be terminated. So there's two tests if the court will determine.
But they're connected.
They're
One of the
connected.
very old cases that I gave you, and the only reason I gave it was for this famous quote, the Little Wonders case that was actually decided in '75, says that the best interest test and that the fitness test and the best interest are not separate and distinct, but cognate and connected. So is she fit to further the best interest of her two children, Logan and Bailey, at the time of trial? So not looking back at this day, but 15 months or whatever from that date, is she fit to further the children's best interest? And again, we mentioned it before, you could have a parent that's fit towards one child and not fit towards another. So it's looked at on an individual parent-child basis. So what would you need to see as a judge in order to terminate parental rights?
I'm just wondering if the department.
And I'm sorry, and what wouldn't be enough to terminate?
This
Go ahead.
might be kind of off subject, but I'm just kind of wondering if the department must have some sort of assessment tools or guidelines to evaluate situations like this, and maybe.
Well, what they're gonna do is the initial, we talked about it before, so there's the initial removal if it's an emergency situation. In her case, they were already, on an ongoing basis, working with her anyway. But once a 51A is supported, the 51B investigation, whether it's the emergency one or the regular one, is still kind of short. So if the case remains open, you're right, the department then does, it's called an assessment, exactly what you said. It's a longer sort of look at the family. And they come up with this assessment, and after the assessment is then the service plan. So they take sort of a long time to assess everything.
Is it similar to like how judges use sentencing guidelines? Like, would there be different levels of like unfitness, or I'm just wondering if they have some sort of like chart or something and different factors like substance abuse, mental health,
Well, for example, you've read in some of these cases, substance abuse in and of itself does not translate to unfitness. It's whether that substance abuse affects the child. So whatever issues the parent has, it has to translate to somehow affecting the child.
So it's really a case-by-case basis, then it's not.
It is. I mean, they throw out these standards, but then, you're right, and it becomes a case-by-case basis by which each individual judge is saying, well, I'm following the law, it's out there, the law is, the law has these standards of what fitness is and what best interest is and the different kinds of ways that parents could be unfit, physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, medical neglect, etc. But again, with each of them, they have to affect the child. So what would prompt you as a judge to say, no way?
Yeah,
No way, I'm not terminating parental rights. That's a very drastic step. Maybe she's unfit, or maybe she's not even unfit.
We don't see that the kids are affected, we just see the kids would like to stay with their mother, at least the oldest one, what she's saying.
Mhm,
The youngest one
mhm.
cannot speak. So would that be taken into consideration?
So there's one factor, the children that obviously, and even children that are abused want to stay with their bio parents no matter what. Now, so we have a four-year-old Logan at the time, and Bailey's an infant. So they're removed. Think of this also. So they're removed, and again, it's going to be a year or year and a half or so before the case goes to trial, unless the department decides to dismiss or somebody steps in and does a guardianship. So in that time frame, unless the department finds relatives, and you already know the department has issues with the bio parents, so unless the department finds relatives, the children are going to be in a foster home. And possibly, depending on the department's goal, it could even become a pre-adoptive foster home. Because as the department does these service plans periodically, say the Christy was in and out of relationships, maybe 209As are also filed, and then the boyfriend comes back. She's moving in and out of apartments because she doesn't have, a good paying job. She looks to her mother for help, but her mother's really not the role model that the department thinks is best and whatnot. So the department changes the goal from reunification and helping Christy to get her children back to adoption. Will then place her, or at least be looking for, an adoptive home. So in the meantime, you have little Bailey, who was an infant that was taken from her. Now, she still has visitation rights. Remember, we talked about that before, that the department can't terminate her visitation rights during this time unless, they show that there's harm to the child and there has to be a hearing and whatnot. So she's seeing them, but she's probably seeing them, once a week, maybe even once a month in DCF offices, right? And you have the two little girls living, ideally, if they're together, right? If they're together, the younger one is, and maybe the older one too, is bonding, right? With the foster parent, whoever it is that they're with.
That's a different
Is that a
way.
factor that the judge looks at? Yeah. So, where are we? What arguments can she make? What can her counsel do to prevent all of this happening to her?
What can her counsel do?
Yeah,
Well, doesn't a lot of it depend on what Christy does?
okay. Such as?
We'll get her to understand that she needs to embrace the service plan.
Okay, but I'm Christy, all right, and, so talk to me.
You have multiple personalities. Okay.
Listen, how can I possibly comply with what the department is asking me to do? I have no one to help me take care of these 2 little girls. You know, I can't even call my mother up to ask her for help. I don't understand that.
Well, counseling, the department has made available to you counseling so you can better learn how to understand that you're capable of eventually standing on your own 2 feet without your mother's help. And you have yet to avail yourself of any of that counseling.
What I was gonna say, not talking to you as Christy, but for Department of Children's Services, they have to prove by clear and convincing evidence,
Yeah.
it's their burden of proof. So
Absolutely.
it's not for Christie's to say, no, I'm a fit mother. It's for Department of Children's Services to prove by clear and convincing, and based on the facts that are here, we don't have any evidence so far to say that it's affecting children in any way.
That you're saying that her issues, and we recognize
Right.
that she has some issues.
And
she's
she
saying
does
that
have
they
issues,
have
but
not
we don't-
affected the way
yeah.
she's been rearing her children so far.
And we cannot guess into a future and say, yeah, it might affect. Again, it has to be evidence right here, right now, in order to say, yeah, she's not.
So let's back up, because we've been talking about the future and what might happen. How would the 72-hour hearing go? So the children were just taken, and she's going in now with her counsel, and as Alina said, the department has to prove, in this case, the 72-hour hearing, by preponderance of the evidence, that the children would be in danger of neglect or abuse. They're put back in with Christy. Now, Christy's living with Paul. So we're at the present. Do you want to answer that, Alina?
What's gonna happen, it has to be.
At the 72.
Right, it has to be preponderance of
Right,
evidence, meaning
right.
that it has to
Right.
be more than,
Mhm.
more likely than
Yep.
not.
Right.
That it's the,
Right.
for the best interest of the children to
Mhm.
remove them from Christie's home.
Yeah, and how did this latest 51A, I don't know if you were told about it,
No?
Paul, yeah, remember when Norman read the note before? When her new case worker received an anonymous report, never confirmed, that Paul had hit Christie in front of Logan. The caseworker to move to remove the both girls from Christie's custody. And this is what Marina had alluded to before, the domestic violence occurring in front of the children and how detrimental that could be.
I would say one child is still a newborn, so how can it affect this child? Child does not comprehend. If it does not physically affect that child, I don't see how it's affecting him in any way. The 4-year-old, again, we need to see at what stage.
Yeah, and that was the issue that Logan saw this
On Logan.
violence. Yeah, Logan's the 4-year-old. Danielle, you had your hand up.
I just had actually a question kind of a little outside of this, with the 51As that are filed. And she's saying, I asked and didn't get confirmation on. Do they ever reveal who the caller is on a 51A?
Well, the 51B report may reveal that. For example, say, in the case of, the mother, or if it's a mandated reporter. Because remember that at the 72-hour hearing, the 51B caseworker is gonna be on the stand. So the department, in order to show that by the preponderance of the evidence, that the children would be in danger of neglect or abuse, that person may end up testifying that we got a, it depends. If it was an anonymous report.
But they don't
it
take
is
anonymous reports, right?
Oh, yes, they do.
I thought the person has to give their name, but they claim that.
Oh, no, well, it depends, in the case of any person, say it's a neighbor calling up just saying, listen, I don't wanna give my name, but I hear every day that this couple fighting, screaming, pots and pans, dishes, blah, blah, blah. I don't wanna, and it sounds really serious, and, the person ends up hanging up. Perhaps that's enough for the department to do, whoever the person screening in might end up still screening in and saying, you know what, this should probably be looked into, but they, I didn't get their name. Most of the time you're getting the person's name,
Yeah, they would-
whether it's mandated reporter or not.
We had a neighbor that was really abusing his son, and like the kid would be running back out, he'd shove his foot out, trip on
Yeah.
him, hit him upside the head, knock him into the house. He was just really, and I called and made a report. You guys all know I tell them, but I really felt like they really more needed services because they were
Yeah,
young,
your
just didn't
name?
know what to do. They refused to take an anonymous report,
Okay.
which I had told them I was going to call anyway. So
Yeah.
it was. I'm sure it wouldn't have been a surprise who it was, but DSS in Mass, at
Yeah.
least when I called.
Yeah.
6
Yeah.
years ago, absolutely flat out refused to take it as an anonymous call.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, this case, I changed the facts, so it would be Massachusetts later on when you take a look at it. This actually occurred in Maine. I forget how many years it was. You'll be interested to see how it turns out, but I wanted to use it as a hypothetical for just this little piece of it.
Bet it was in Hancock
So-
County.
Yeah,
I
they've been up
forget
there.
where in Maine, you'll find out when, and I actually have a videotape somewhere, that we may or may not have time to watch, but, the link gives you all sorts of information about the case. It might even bring up part of the video, I don't think the whole thing. So anyway, the 72-hour hearing, do we have enough? Does the department have enough for the 72?
No.
No. Lena says no, so back it up.
Again, the report is anonymous. We cannot really trace it to the source. We don't know if it's somebody who, enemy to Christie, who wants to get her in trouble, somebody who's just reporting something like that. It's not true. We didn't verify it from kids, from Paul, from Christie. Nobody really supported this anonymous report.
Suppose that it mentions that her new caseworker, suppose the 72-hour hearing consists of not only her new caseworker, but, the caseworker that had worked with her over this period of time, and reports all of the stuff, not only this latest, okay, her going to, leaving the state, going to her father, again, living with the other guy who's the substance abuser, et cetera.
Again,
So
it
you're
has
hearing
to
all of
affect
this stuff.
children. It has to affect, the only thing that here is
Okay.
the ties to the children is that Paul hit Christie in front of Logan. Everything else, that relative, some kind of relative, does not affect children. This is the first time we have Logan, who supposedly witnessed that Christie being physically abused. But again, we cannot verify that. That's not enough to say that it is an evidence, preponderance of evidence that, the child is affected.
Are we all agreeing with that? Elizabeth looks like she's thinking about it, not sure.
Well, I just wanted to see if it happened in Chelsea, Maine.
You looked it up,
And
no fair.
That's outside of the capital, Augusta. I'm from Maine. And it looks like it was ended up being a lot
Oh,
worse. And
Yeah. Hold that thought for Thursday.
Okay.
Norman's thinking too.
Well, I mean, I understand why they would come in and take them based on Christie's past, and on the other hand, at 72, I may have more of, may not be.
Remember, if you're the judge and you're dissatisfied, if you feel that legally the department hasn't met their burden, it means you're gonna dismiss the case and the kids are gonna go back home to live with Christie and Paul. And Alina says that doesn't, her parenting is not affected by all of her issues.
If that's what she's saying, I don't know that I agree with that.
Okay, so disagree.
She's sitting right next to me. Great of her. Well, I mean, you know, she just has a history of making bad relationship choices. And it just seems to me that if Paul has hit her once, what is Paul gonna, you know, all of a sudden, you know, get into Billy Graham or something? You know, there's a better than a 50-50 likelihood that he's gonna hit her again. And then when, you know, I don't know when it happens, you know, that he said, well, I'm gonna, you know, whack Logan too, just, you know. I don't know that.
It's all guessing game. We don't even know if he hit her once.
Well, but I mean,
It could be her mother making all these stories.
Kelly?
Well, I don't think there's any evidence directly, you know, to Alina's point, directly saying that it has affected the children. Yet, there is evidence that she has put the children in potential danger by bringing them to Florida, seeing her father, who she accused is molesting them, continually contacting her own mother, where we said there were 51 A's that she's not supposed to do that, but she continues to do it anyway. And the boyfriends that she keeps. I mean, you know, there isn't any evidence at this point saying that something has happened directly.
Suppose she
to the
admits it,
children.
okay, I'm gonna make it easy. So she admits it on the stand, that Paul hit her once. And you know, you saw her little attitude when I was playing her, I think. All right.
Yeah.
So what?
Not a big deal. Right. I think she's just showing,
It was only once.
you know, an inability to protect her children. I mean, in that her needs are becoming, you know, are more important than the children's. She said it as far as going to visit the father in Florida. You know, so what, her boyfriend only hit her once. You know, it might not happen again. Well, she's putting her needs of staying with the boyfriend ahead of the needs of her child.
And he only hit her once, but he could have hit the children.
Right.
You know, instead by mistake.
You know,
She's already admitted that she puts her, you know, she can put her needs in front of the children. And I underline that because I know that there are some others in the room. And I wonder, can you see a reason that you would put your needs in front of your kids? I mean, I don't, that's pretty strong. I mean, you know, it's never gonna happen to me, but, you know, you know, it's a pretty strong instinct to take care of
What
your
did she
children.
say? She says, where is it, what page is it, Norman?
Yeah, sometimes.
3, I think.
On page 3?
Bottom of 3, I do, that's the sad part.
Sometimes you have to take care of your needs before you can take care of your children's, but that was a hard choice to make. And she was talking about when she went to Florida. It wasn't an easy one to go down there. I originally didn't want to even take my kids with me. I wanted to leave them back in Massachusetts so I could do it, but I couldn't be away from them. So what she's saying is, I think she was trying to get away from here to see if she could get a good job, maybe away from the abusive boyfriend, the abusive mom, and at first was like, you know, let me see if I could do it myself, but wait a minute, I can't be without my kids, I'm gonna take them with me. But then she was living in his trailer with dad and with big issues relating.
but then she goes on to say that she wanted to say it to his face and get back at him.
Mhm.
You know, so that kind of undermines me
That's true.
that she was
Mhm.
trying to make a better life.
Yeah.
Now, in the DCF service plan,
Mhm.
could DCF specify or put a family in a certain housing complex, specify where you're to live, and maybe help them find some social services and some sort of place that would be safe for the kids?
I'm not sure what
Like, do
you
they-
suggested.
I'm just wondering if, since it doesn't seem like she really had a place to go to, and that's why she went to Florida to get away from everything,
Yeah.
could DCF have helped her and, you know, find like a low-income housing place for
Helped her, yeah,
them to
yeah,
live?
yeah. Mhm. Yeah,
Helped
if
her
there's
with-
services available like that, sure, yeah.
And when you say help, just schedule an appointment for her to go and see someone, is that how it goes?
Yeah, or you could have a really good caseworker
Okay.
that's sort of following up on everything, and maybe even a caseworker that actually has a good relationship with her rather than an antagonistic relationship. What's that?
Like she has
Well, like the one that picked up the kids toward
Right,
the end of this
yeah.
thing, you know, was like,
You're doing
you
one.
know, the twin
Yeah.
sister of Nurse Ratched.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Because it seems like she has a maturity problem. She needs someone, she cannot make her own decisions. She's like, she's very dependent personality. So, yeah, if the
so as we
department.
said, I mean, has a lot of issues. Has she directly abused or neglected the children? Doesn't look like it, but when you take all the issues together, do they affect the best interest of the children? So there's a real possibility she might lose at the 72-hour hearing, and depending what occurs, 15 months later, there's a real possibility she could lose parental rights if she still has. No one of them, because we just pulled them all apart, right? No one issue in and of itself will translate to unfitness. But it's sort of taking everything together, placing that also in the context with what the children are doing, seeing her once a month, being in a home where they're being taken care of and whatnot, maybe changing towards her. Maybe she's also not cooperating, or maybe due to her issues, she's not even coming to visitation. One of the cases, the adoption of Helen, talks about that. The mother that just didn't follow up on stuff, again, due to her issues. So there's sort of like the totality of the circumstances could really work against her. When you see that all she is a young mother with no means, no support that's good for her and her children, and is really put in a bad place because of all of that, because she has really no one to help her. No one to help her. Did you read any of the cases? Yeah. Oh.
And it's interesting, only one out of
What's
all
it?
10, only one case, they were not, denied the adoption. Only one out of 10.
There are so many of these appellate cases, because just like criminal cases, parents, when they lose, have the right to appeal. And the appeals court and the SJC must review. And you're right, in most of the cases, they're usually not reversed. Petition of DSS, 1983. What were parents' problems in that case? Anybody has it?
Wasn't this the one where the mother kept on giving up the children?
Yes, yes.
And then she would
I
want
can't take them,
Yeah.
I can't deal with it.
And then she would want them back, but she wouldn't do it. They were trying to give her plans to help her maintain her physical custody of them, and she wasn't having it. And she just kept on going back and forth with them.
And actually, that case had a semi-happy ending, because the court found the best interest of the children would be served by their adoption by the paternal grandparents. Little Wanderers, I already mentioned, it's just for the best interest and fitness test. Adoption of Astrid, I'm sorry.
This was another unfitness. Where the mom was pregnant, and we don't know where she came from, but she went to an adoption agency in Newton, and during that interview, she mentioned vaguely about two prior kids, that one that was dead, and the other one they lost custody of. And so she gave birth. And so I guess the people in Newton, anyway, they got a 72. They got, the 72 schedule.
Mhm.
And the mom went back to the father of this child, even, you know, and didn't even go to the hearing. And so, I guess people, was it a court investigator here who was working with an investigator in the other state?
Yes, and that's, this case is noted for that the admission of the investigator's report and recommendations, you know, were not error by the judge below. And we mentioned that before, that in terms of evidence, even though Section 21 and 21A of the statute says that the rules of evidence normally apply, when you're looking at a court investigator and the court investigator's report, even if it contains hearsay and multiple hearsay, it's all going to be coming in. So that was okay, according to the appeals court. Were there any other holdings, Norman?
Well, I guess they, it's kind of pathetic. The investigator found them living in a pop-up trailer in some remote,
Right.
you know, area, and, you know, finally kind of shook them down and said, I guess the dead baby was buried, like,
Right.
you know, very close to where they were.
Right.
And so the guy did 4 months, pleaded guilty to child endangerment.
So, yeah, so there was an ongoing criminal case too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, anyway, they just, you know, the SAC affirmed the judge's finding of
Okay.
unfitness by clear and convincing evidence.
Okay, good. Hugo, 1998, and this is SJC case. Alana?
Yeah, I think this one, I thought of this one when you mentioned that if the two little girls, if they were together, they
Yeah.
would form like a bond with their foster mother. So I thought in this case, because they determined he was with a paternal aunt, I think, and they determined that he had special needs, and he was so, he got attached to where he was, that would have been detrimental to him to go back to his mother. So they actually granted custody to the aunt to adopt him, who had also previously adopted his brother, I think.
Yeah, and the aunt lived in New Jersey, but prior to that, so that Hugo lived before trial
Mhm.
with who?
Two different.
The foster mom.
The foster mom,
Yeah.
who also wanted to adopt him, right?
Right.
And he had formed a bond with that foster
Yeah,
mom.
yes.
So very sort of traumatic
Mhm.
case, standing for, you know, the proposition that the best interest of the child warranted this placement, this adoption, but so she's got the blood bond, number one, and the fact that, as you mentioned, that she could take care of this child with special needs because she had done that before. But in the interim, you know, how many years had elapsed where, you know, the family that he resided with thought he was theirs, and he did too. So that happens with a lot of these cases where you see, the Linus case that we'll discuss on Thursday is a similar sort of holding. And it's almost like, well, you know, is it that the department screwed up from the beginning? You know, why did all this time elapse when this aunt, was she paternal aunt? I forget, but anyway, the paternal aunt could have had custody of Hugo from the beginning, and you wouldn't have all this trauma. Anyway, Eno v. LLM, I just want to run through some of these so we can have time.
Well, I don't know that the department, you know, necessarily screwed up. I mean, you know,
Right,
they they had Hugo 3 days after he was born.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think that was more of a procedural thing where the parents, you know, were fighting the whole process.
That's true.
And Ms. L was the second foster home,
Mhm.
so.
Okay. Eno v. LLM, Lily?
It was the same-sex parents.
Yeah.
And they had a child, and then one of the mothers, they had some issues or whatnot, so the other mother had assumed financial responsibility for the kid and everything like that.
first cases that discuss that discuss the de facto parent, right? What does that mean, de facto parent?
You're not biological.
Right, right.
But are in a position to play a significant role.
A
and
significant
interact
role in a
and do
child's life
with
and
the
do.
child.
Okay. Iris? Kelly?
Oh, Iris, was the case where the baby was a month old and was brought into, I believe it was Children's Hospital with a skull fracture that caused hemorrhaging in the brain. And they didn't, the parents brought the baby in, and there was no actual determination of what caused the skull fracture. So the hospital filed 51A. And basically it was just that the child was taken based on just that one incident. There wasn't any other incident. So, the question was whether that was enough for them to be taken, just because it was unexplained. Let's see. And the appellate court decided that they will not order a reversal unless there was a clear error, and there wasn't.
Okay. Adoption of Paula? Elizabeth?
This is the one with the mother that had Facto syndrome, and the district court level, 7 of her children were found to be in need of care and protection, and they were committed to the department. And then she's obviously challenging this because of bad woman syndrome being primary argument, it seems. And again, there was there was abuse of the children and just an awful relationship that she was in. There were school reports that the children were dressed in dirty clothing.
So if Christy doesn't watch it, could this be a situation she could find herself in?
Definitely. Same sort of, thing, like we could escalate to something like this for sure. And so what happened was the mother and the father ended up appealing the decision of the district court, and the SJC found, the SJC affirmed the care and protection cases because they found that there was clear and convincing evidence of the mother's unfitness to care for the 7 children.
Okay. Manuel, I just checked, I was saying to myself, why is Manuel in this pack? I gave you Manuel before. And all it stood for was, remember the child initially waived the 72-hour hearing, but then there was a change in the situation, and they wanted to hold another hearing, and the question was whether the waiver of the 72-hour hearing in the prior proceeding was a relinquishment was also a waiver of a later sort of change of events, and that wasn't the case. So it talked about the distinction between a Section 24 emergency hearing and a Section 25 temporary custody hearing. And the standards are the same, the preponderance of the evidence. So that's all that was about, and I don't know why I stuck it in this pack. Adoption of Helen. said you didn't, Ashley
I
didn't.
can give you all the.
That's all right.
anti-bullying.
Marina has it.
Yeah, I can, adoption of Helen, it's actually the case about the girl who resided with her mother, and her mother was, she actually admitted that she was she has substance abuse problems.
The mother.
The mother, and
Yeah.
she admitted that, so the
Okay.
girl was put in the foster care for 2 weeks, and then she was returned to the mother again, based upon the agreement which the DSS had with the mother that she will continue receiving counseling and treatment for her problem. And she was also supposed to be in touch with the department, and she unfortunately she didn't keep her promise. She stopped getting the therapy. She missed a few appointments, and she failed to communicate with the department. And based upon that, the girl was removed again from the custody of the mother, and she was put in the foster home. And the mother appealed, but the judge decided because she was not reliable in this case, so she couldn't continue being a parent, and that was her appeal was denied.
Yeah, on review, I mean, the SJC notes that the judge below made 59 findings.
That's-
History of substance abuse, late missed appointments, failure to communicate, where she was to the department, that's like Christy running off to Florida. So minimal, as you say, minimal communication with the child, all, again, relating to whether she was currently unfit to further the best interest of the child at the time of trial, so her parental rights were thus terminated. Petition of DSS, does Norman have that one? It was the 1987 petition of DSS.
You did through Paula,
You did through Paul, okay.
only because I got cutty eyes.
All right, we can, you want to
Thursday.
break here so everybody will have time to read? Because on the schedule for, initially for the next class is only Linus, Eduardo, Imelda, Wilhelmina, and Keith. So if you want to read those and from petition of DSS through Greta, we can go over those on Thursday.
Okay.
So give everybody a chance to catch up.
You want us to
Okay?
do the, taking of Logan, you want us to look that up?
Yeah, just take a look at it, just so you can,
There's
see
a-
the horrible turn of events in that case.
I found a frontline PBS link.
Yes,
that
yeah.
I can send you if you want to forward it out to the class. It looks like there's some videos and interviews with.
Yeah, it's from the link that I
Oh,
gave you guys.
okay, great.
Yeah. As I said, I have the videotape, but I think it might be even longer than class time. Let's see if I can dig it out. If not for now, maybe for amplification, because it's interesting to watch.
The kids are so cute.
They are. Okay, so we finish that up on Thursday.